Now, having this gradient here is nice, certainly perfect if we would be building a Tequila Sunrise app. But as a last step for finishing this background, I actually want to overlay a background image above this gradient, but below the other elements on the UI. So below this input container, for example. Now, a background image can be added with another component that's actually already built into React Native, and that's the image background component. Now, we learned about the image component before already. Image background is quite similar, but as the name suggests, it renders an image in the background instead of the foreground. Now, I want to have that above the linear gradient so that the linear gradient shimmers through the image, but below all the other UI elements. So therefore now here, I'll add image background like this and wrap my other content with it so that the other content is inside the background image and therefore above the background image visually. And now on this image background, just as on the normal image, we have to add a source. And this source should provide the image that should be displayed here. Now for this, I prepared an image for you. And I will add an images folder here in the assets folder into which you should store this image. You find the image attached, it's this background PNG file, and this image looks like this, just a couple of dices. By the way, I took this image from Unsplash, and of course I do want to give proper attribution therefore. And there, if you search for dices, I think, you find this image. So this image was not taken or created by me. It's from Unsplash. Unsplash is a great resource for finding free images, and you can take this image here or another image from Unsplash if you want to use it in your app. So now with the image stored in the assets images folder, we should point at it. And just as with the normal image component, we don't just pass a path as a string here. Instead, we use this special require function and then construct a path to the image. Now here I'm in app.js, so I don't need to go up one level first. Instead, I am already next to the assets folder. So with /, we tell React Native that we're looking for a folder that's in the same folder as this app.js file. And then it's the assets folder, there the images folder, and in there the background PNG file, like this. Now, image background also takes another prop which is very important, and that's the resize mode. It's very likely that the image you're using is too small or too big for the screen size of the device on which the app is running. And resize mode controls how the image will be resized if it doesn't have the same dimensions as the underlying device. Here you got multiple options, which you might know from web development, because there you have similar options when working with images, with background images to be precise. And I will use cover, which will make sure that the image always covers up all the available space, but not by distorting it, but instead by zooming in or out. So that's a nice setting when it comes to adjusting the size of the image. Now what's also important is that I will add the style prop to image background. And here I also will point at a root screen so that this also takes up all the available space. It's not enough that the gradient does this. This image should also take up all the available space that is made available by its parent component, so by the gradient in this case. If we now save this, here's the image, but the gradient is gone. Now, you might just want an image, and in that case, this is perfect. But if you also want the gradient back, we now have to make this image transparent. Not entirely transparent, of course, but to some extent, so that the gradient shimmers through the image. And this can be achieved with another special prop that we can set on image background, and that's the image style. Now, we already added style here, but what you have to understand is that image background, this component provided by React Native, is actually under the hood a combination of components. We saw that before in the React Native GitHub repository, where you can see all the React Native source code when we had a look at the button. If you have a look at the image background.js file here, you will see how that works internally, and you will see that it's a combination of a view and the normal image component. Now the style which we set here, this prop, is added to this view. We can see that here the style is set. The inner image can also receive some styling though. And here on this inner image, we want to add some transparency. Because the view is transparent anyways, it doesn't have a background color by default, but of course the image, well, shows the image. So therefore now we can add the background image style object and add the opacity property to give this image an opacity of, let's say, 0.15. So that would be 85% transparency. So almost entirely transparent. And it's now this style property which we will add as an image style. So to the image that's inside of this view that is exposed by image background. If we save this, now we have the image and the gradient. And now we have a combination of gradient and image, which I think looks quite nice. Of course, as always, feel free to pick different styles, but I'm quite happy with that background. And I would say after all that styling and layouting and all these things on which we worked thus far, it's now time to dive into some actual logic. Because up to this point, we have a nice user interface, but nothing happens when we tap those buttons or when we enter something into the input field. And it's time to change that.